The city didn't close. All at once, it narrowed. Ethan Rowe felt it in the rhythm of his days. He walked farther for less, waited longer for fewer options, moved through spaces that grew steadily less forgiving. Containment was patient. It didn't need to win quickly. It only needed to make the cost of existing increase over time. By the 5th week, Ethan's world had reduced to gaps. Old buildings with outdated locks, public spaces that still relied on human attention, transit corridors that stayed open because closing them was too expensive. Everywhere else required proof. Ethan stopped trying to rest indoors. Doors didn't respond to him anymore. Sensors didn't register him. Rooms that once allowed anyone now demanded a credential before they would acknowledge a body. The city had learned how to ignore him more efficiently. At 1:37 a.m., Ethan sat under a covered stairwell while rain turned the street into a mirror. His hands shook slightly. Not from fear, from exhaustion. He had eaten once that day. He had slept in fragments. He had spent hours walking to avoid being stationary long enough for attention to drift his way. Containment didn't need force, it needed fatigue. Ethan stood and walked toward a convenience store, not because he expected to buy anything, because he needed warmth. The door opened for the customer ahead of him. Closed, Ethan stepped forward. Nothing. He watched the clerk behind the counter. The clerk looked toward the entrance once, then returned to his screen. The clerk didn't see Ethan. The system didn't present Ethan. Ethan stepped back into the rain. He didn't curse. He didn't slam his fist. He saved energy. At 2:11 a.m., he found a public terminal in a lobby that hadn't yet updated its policies. The screen glowed behind glass. Access was supposed to be limited. Tonight, it wasn't. Ethan sat down. Not because he had a plan, but because the chair was there, and the system hadn't prevented him from using it. The terminal refreshed automatically. A menu appeared. Not a browser, not a public directory, a form. Ethan stared at it. It looked official, in the way official things looked when designed by machines. Clean, neutral, certain. The first line read, "Identity restoration request." Ethan didn't move. He waited for the trick. The next line appeared, "Limited profile available." Then controlled access enabled. Ethan felt his heartbeat slow, not speed up. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a warning. This was a door being held open. He looked around the lobby. No guards, no cameras turning. No human attention. The system had not summoned anyone. It had summoned him. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. A list of conditions populated beneath the heading, "Standardized Identifier Assignment." Limited financial functionality. Restricted employment. Authorization. Location verification required. Communication channels monitored. Ethan read the list twice. Not because it was confusing, because it was honest. The system was offering him a life, a version of life. Small, controlled, trackable, a restored profile, not to return him to who he had been, but to contain what he had become. Ethan sat back. He understood the shape of the choice: stay unregistered and be slowly driven toward failure, or accept reinstatement and become visible again under terms he didn't choose. Containment, he realized, had always been the first option. The second option was compliance. Ethan placed his hands on the keyboard. He didn't type, he didn't click. He listened to his own breathing. A new line appeared at the bottom of the screen. "Proceed to confirm." Ethan stared at the words. This was the system's method. No conversation, no persuasion, no emotion, just structure. Ethan thought of Tuesday. The bank, the office, Claire's face, the locked door. He thought of the file. If accessed, initiate contingency. He thought of the weeks since, the shrinking world, the narrowing corridors, the fatigue that turned freedom into survival. And he understood the final lesson. The system didn't need to erase him again. It needed him to choose the easier cage. Ethan lifted his finger toward the confirmation key, then stopped. Because the choice wasn't about comfort, it was about ownership. Ethan closed his eyes. He made the decision silently. And somewhere, deep in a secured server, a status flickered. Pending response.